tonight's meeting, we'll ask that you complete a survey, and we appreciate your time in doing so. And if you know someone who'd like more information about the project and possibly doesn't have access to the internet, we have provided printed out packets at Walgreens on Airport Boulevard at Oak Springs. So you can go pick up those packets. So I think we're ready to get started. And I see a few chats, comments here, so thank you for your comments. Someone says they're eager to hear the overview of public interest and input. We will definitely be covering that tonight. And someone else says, I'm looking forward to seeing the development ideas. We agree with you, and we are looking forward to that as well. So thank you. You're letting us know our chat is working, so we are in communication, and we're looking forward to sharing some good information and hearing from you tonight. So I want to cover tonight's agenda, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mandy DeMeo and Travis Perlman. So we're going to recap the previous meeting. We met April 21st. We're going to talk about the goals for today's meeting. We will review the public feedback, the input that we received from you all, and then we will share the theoretical development scenarios, which are ideas that are being presented as concepts, draft concepts, and then we'll talk about how to stay engaged. So that's our agenda for this evening. All right. Next slide, please. So, in our April 21st meeting, we introduced and provided background information on the Austin Housing Finance Corporation. We discussed affordable housing needs and goals. We shared the project area and site description, and then discussed the development objectives and the timeline. The presentation and the recording of that meeting is at GardnerDevelopmentATX.com. So if you want to hear and see what happened in the previous meeting, you can view it online.
So Sharonda, this is Mandy, and
yes.
I'm going to go ahead and take this and,
yes.
and dig in a little bit deeper. First, thank you for leading us through the agenda, and thanks to all the folks who are joining us virtually tonight. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules. Some of you or all of you may have attended the April 21st virtual meeting. I just wanted to do a pretty high level, but for those of you who did not attend, we did talk about what Austin Housing Finance Corporation is. And for those of you who don't know, Austin Housing Finance is a housing finance corporation which is organized under the Texas State Local Government Code. There are housing finance corporations across the state of Texas. We are a public nonprofit corporation, and our board of directors is actually the mayor and city council. So sometimes if you attend a city council meeting, you may hear the mayor recess city council and go into Austin Housing Finance Corporation to take up the business of Austin Housing Finance Corporation. And AHFC, our business, is affordable housing for low and moderate income populations. We finance affordable housing, we create affordable housing, and this is one of the ways in which we create affordable housing is the acquisition and disposition of property. At the meeting on April 21st, we also talked about the city's overall housing needs and our goals for affordable housing. So we provided a little bit of background on Austin's strategic housing blueprint, which was approved by City Council in 2017, that laid out the need over the next 10 years for 60,000 units of affordable housing that is affordable to households earning at or below 80% of the median family income. And we broke it down into different income levels. And then last year, we further broke down that large 60,000 unit goal into city council districts. The project we're talking about tonight is in Council District 3. And the goal for Council District 3 over the next 10 years is almost 6,300, so 6,300 units of affordable housing. And so AHFC assets or other publicly owned land are ways in which we can achieve affordability. I wanted to talk just briefly. We're going to go into some details about the site. But of course, we're talking about the Gardner Road site, which is located in the Go Valley Johnston Terrace neighborhood area. And it's approximately 6 acres. It's just south of Bulm Road, the intersection of Gardner and Bulm Road. Again, approximately 6 acres. And we're going to talk about potential development scenarios that are possible on this site and get some community feedback about that. In terms of the timeline, again, we discussed this on the 21st, but the timeline is we had our first public meeting, April 21st, then our second meeting tonight, and then in June, we plan on releasing a solicitation, a request for proposals, where we'll lay out kind of our expectations for what a developer could do with this site. And then we'll solicit those proposals. We anticipate that we'll give folks at least 60 days to submit proposals. We'll then review the proposals. And by the end of the calendar year, so by December 2020, we anticipate executing an agreement with a developer to create affordable housing on the site. We, of course, don't know what that affordable housing is going to look like yet, which is one of the reasons we want to talk to you all tonight. We anticipate that construction will, based on this timeline, construction would be completed sometime in 2022 or 2023.
Thank you. So next we'll have Travis Perlman, who will review the input that we received from the community in our last meeting, and then also talk about the theoretical development concepts. You unmute yourself, Travis.
Thank you, Sharonda. Thanks for joining us again, everyone who attended the last meeting, and for those who are joining us for the first time this meeting. Again, thank you for joining us. So we're going to talk about kind of the ways that we collected inputs, both prior to, during, and after the first meeting up until now. So similar to this, we were dealing with the challenge of coronavirus globally within the city of Austin. So we hosted our first virtual meeting on April 21st, and at that meeting, participants were able to provide input a variety of ways, either live on the video chat. They could also text in their comments, or they could also join via phone and provide their comments that way as well. Both before, during, and after the meeting until the end of April, we had an online survey on our website, which we promoted in the previous meeting. And we also allowed individuals to text us comments, both after the meeting as well. And also not listed there is individuals could leave messages, could call 311, leave comments there as well. And then lastly, as Sharonda mentioned previously, we printed copies of the presentations that we gave at the previous meeting and left them at the Walgreens on Airport Boulevard, nearest to the site. With that presentation were paper versions of the surveys as well. And those paper versions could be filled out and mailed back to Austin Housing Finance Corporation as well. So in terms of meeting participation and the amount of feedback we received, we had 25 people who attended the last meeting, and 29 individuals which left comments or that took the survey, and then 10 people that left specific comments as well. So I'm going to go over a high level of what we received in terms of feedback from the community using the variety of different forms that I just laid out. to give you an idea of what this chart is showing, basically we took all the comments that we received and we broke them down into groups, categories based upon key themes identified in the comments. And so those key themes are identified here. You know, a comment may touch on several key themes, and so in that case, it may be categorized under multiple themes in this chart as well. Overwhelmingly, as you can see on the chart, the majority of the comments were related to the incorporation of other uses besides residential uses on the site, primarily as a community amenity for residential that would be developed on the site. And then in addition to that, there was a number of comments that spoke to specifics around affordability on the site as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of how we're addressing community input, we were pleasantly surprised with some of the comments received around affordability. A lot of them dealt with specific concepts and goals that we are already implementing and intend to implement into our request for proposal, primarily being our development objectives for the site. And so some of those include maximizing the number of affordable units on the site, which we spoke about as our development objectives the last presentation, and really prioritizing deep affordability on the site for extremely and very low income households. And then also providing housing for hard to serve populations, individuals with special needs and such, which is also one of our development objectives as well. And I think what was useful on those comments is we felt like it was somewhat confirmation that we were on the right track in terms of our development objectives. And in addition to those comments around the affordability, as I mentioned, the majority of comments were related to the desire to see the inclusion of different non-residential uses on the site, and specifically focused around a specific development concept. A lot of it was focused around development concept envisioned by the Imagine Art organization, who is headed up by Debbie Kaiser, who has a very specific vision of an inclusive artists community. And so a number of individuals, I think, that support that vision participated in the previous meeting. And we're happy to have y'all. I've spoken to Debbie several times, and I'm well aware of kind of her master vision and plans and goals for the development that she's looking to build. And I think it's a beautiful vision. And I think there's no reason why that specific vision could not, why we could not consider it, as long as it is focused on housing primarily. But in addition to that, because this is a competitive solicitation, we're not really in the space to kind of select specific developers to kind of hand off projects to. But I fully expect Debbie to submit a request for proposal for this site, and I look forward to receiving that. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into potential development ideas for the site. And I kind of want to, before we move on to those, I kind of want to provide some context for what these ideas are. We've contracted an economic.
Can you repeat that last part? It went out just a little bit.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So we're going to present 3 potential development concepts for the site. And I want to give a little bit of context to everybody in terms of what those development concepts are and what they are not. We contracted with an economic and financial consultant, an architectural design consultant, and a civil engineering consultant to develop concepts for the site that include both conceptual designs showing buildings on the site so that participants could get a feel for what development could look like on the site. And as far as the financial consultant, we had them run financial feasibility analysis for what could be developed on the site and what the City of Austin's subsidy that would be needed to fund that specific affordable housing. And so as we go through these concepts, what you'll see is specific number of bedrooms, affordability levels for each development, number of units and such. And then you'll also see City of Austin subsidy per unit and total. And so in terms of these development concepts, these are things that we believe could be developed on the site, and that we may see requests for proposals submitted for things similar to this. Now, we may see things similar to this, but I can guarantee you that it will, whatever ultimately gets developed on the site will not be the same as any of these development concepts. It will either be slightly different or it may be entirely different. But again, we're kind of using this as a tool to kind of familiarize people with what development could look like on the site, what the implications are as far as affordable housing, and also use it as a tool to gain additional feedback from participants as well. Next slide, please. So the first concept that we had our consultants work on was a concept that kind of divides the site up more or less evenly into small lot, single family, detached homes, there you see in the yellow, and small lot attached duplexes you see in kind of the darker yellowish brown. And in this concept, we found that we could achieve potentially up to 36 units on the site. And we decided to model it assuming that 50% of the units, so 50% of the single family detached units and 50% of the duplexes would be affordable to households at 80% MFI. And so for a 4-person household, that would be an gross annual income of a little over $78,000. And a home that would be affordable at that sales price that would be sold to that home today would be sold at a price of $211,000. And in this concept, these homes would be 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-story homes for both the duplexes and the single-family detached homes. Again, we were able to achieve 36 units on 36 total units on the site, or 72 total units on the site. 36 of those which would be affordable at 80% MFI. And in terms of the average subsidy that would be needed, we found that because the market rate units, because there's a good market for market rate units in this area, and because that we were only modeling that we would require 50% of the units to be affordable, that we actually wouldn't have to necessarily give any additional subsidy beyond the land itself. And then so what we found essentially is that someone, a developer or builder, could either purchase the land for free or lease the land using a ground lease or some other mechanism from Austin Housing Finance Corporation, develop 72 units on the site, and they'd be able to pay us $82,000 per affordable unit. So $82,000 for each of the 36 affordable units. So essentially they'd be able to buy the land from us for about $3 million and deliver 36 affordable units. What this is useful for is showing that, because we would not have to give any additional subsidy, and because it is positive, we could potentially get additional affordability on the site. And kind of some preliminary back of the napkin analysis, I think we could probably get additional 4 to 5 units on the site and then have the total city subsidy needed at 0. And so in that situation, we would have 0 city subsidy, but we would have somewhere around 41 or 42 affordable units on the site. Next slide, please. And so this is kind of a 3-dimensional model of what development could look like on the site. Again, this is somewhat crude. It's kind of not the normal architectural features that you would see, but you can kind of see the photos down on the bottom of the right in the screen to give you a little bit more context in terms of what this is going to look like on the ground. Next slide, please. So the second concept we modeled was a 3-story walk-up apartment with surface parking. So this is a very common type of development that's been developed around the country, really since probably the mid-late 60s. It's still very common today. And in terms of this development, we assumed that this type of development would be a small 4% tax credit project. And for people that aren't familiar with the low-income housing tax credit program, that's a federal program that's defined under the Internal Revenue Service Code. That's the largest producer of affordable multifamily housing in the country. And it's a program that's been around for decades as well. It's a program that a good portion of the projects that our organization funds also receives low-income housing tax credits, which are distributed through the state housing finance agency called the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. And so in this development, we found that we could get about 190 units on the site. And then you see kind of the bedroom counts and the affordability levels there. We have about 30 units there at 30% MFI, so that would be affordable to a household of 4 at $29,000. At 50% MFI, we have 60 units, 60% MFI, 70 units, and 80% MFI, 30 units. And so this is a deeply affordable project. This would be similar to the type of projects that we currently fund in terms of both the bedroom counts and the affordability levels. And when we ran the financial analysis on this development scenario, again, we found a positive subsidy. And so when you see the negative sign there under city subsidy per affordable unit needed, negative $21,000, that means that we would have to give negative $21,000. In other words, we could be paid $21,000 in this per affordable unit, and this project would still be financially feasible for a developer to build.
So let me make sure that everyone got that. What you just shared was that we would pay $21,000 per unit?
No, in this scenario, a developer could pay us $21,000 per affordable unit. So okay. We have 190 affordable units on the site. So a developer could pay $21,000 times 190 units, which equals a little over $4 million, the number below right there. So a developer theoretically could pay us $4 million for the site and potentially build this project. Okay. And so again, we would not necessarily need any additional subsidy.
Got it. Thank you.
One thing that I do want to point out here, though, is this analysis does not take into account the timing of money. In terms of development, developers get different amounts of money at different times, whether it be from the bank, whether it be the low-income housing tax credits, whether it be gap financing from our organization. And because of that timing of money, and because a development may need additional money that they have available at a certain time, that kind of necessitates potential need for gap financing. And that scenario, essentially, we could give a small amount of gap financing to get through pre-development and early on until tax credits, to the tax credit equity started being received by the developer. but we would expect that those benefits would be repaid either through a ground lease or through a partnership, through financial benefits as part of a partnership agreement or something of that nature. And so keep in mind that while it shows that a developer could pay $4 million for this, that payment may not be able to be made completely upfront. And some of those financial benefits may not accrue to the Housing Finance Corporation till later in the future, and potentially paid out of the cash flow of the development once it's being operated. Next slide, please. And so again, this is kind of a 3D model of what development could look like on the site for a 3-story walk-up concept. And then again, in the bottom right, you see the photograph of a facade of what type of these buildings look like. And so the third and last development concept we modeled was kind of a mixed building topology concept. And so in this concept, a little bit more than half of the site is devoted towards 4-story apartments with parking garage. And then a little bit less than half of the site is dedicated towards 2-story small lot duplexes there in the yellow and brown you can see on the image. And in terms of the affordability and bedroom information for this site, we found that under this scenario, we could develop a 250-unit 4-story multifamily apartment on the site and 32 duplex units on the site, and for a total of 252 affordable units. And again, this project has deep affordability. This is similar to a project that we would finance. And we're assuming that this would be a 4% tax credit project. And so when you take a look at the subsidy per unit, this one, we would have to give a small subsidy per unit of $12,000 per unit. And that's primarily because of the increased construction costs associated with this type of multifamily development, and the fact that the 4% tax credit program doesn't provide the amount of financing that the 9% tax credit program does. And so there's a need for additional gap funding, and often a need for additional gap funding in those types of scenarios. And in this scenario, we estimated the total subsidy needed to develop this concept would be $3 million. Next slide, please. And so this is a 3-dimensional model of what that might look like on the site. And again, photographs of similar building facades down in the bottom right. Next slide, please. And so, as Sharonda mentioned previously, as well as I mentioned, we're really looking. Part of developing these development concepts were to use them as kind of a prompt to get additional feedback, to understand, what you may or may not like in each development concept. And so we've put up a survey that's available on our website. You can see the link there, gardnerdevelopmentatx.com. That survey will be available until the end of the month. We'd appreciate everyone on the line going on there, providing us their comments and feedback, and also sharing that survey with your friends to also provide additional feedback. And so as we move forward in our development timeline, I wanted to kind of highlight ways to stay engaged. This is our second community meeting before the release of our request for proposal. We're not anticipating an additional community meeting until we release the request for proposal in June. But one thing that we want to make sure to do is everyone that's been participating in these meetings, that's interested in these projects, we want to keep them engaged along the entire way of both the solicitation process and the development process. And so we're going to be sending out periodic emails going forward to the email distribution list that we've compiled from these meetings. So in terms of when you could expect updates, we will provide updates once we release the request for proposal. And people could also go and see the request for proposal and see what that looks like. Also when we've awarded it, so when we were awarded the winning proposal, so that people have an idea of, generally speaking, what is going to be developed on the site. And also, once we finally executed a development agreement with the winning proposer, and we know pretty solidly what will be developed on the site. And then again, as the project, as the development team starts the development review process and starts construction, we will provide updates at zoning. This site is currently zoned public. It will need to be rezoned for residential housing to be developed on the site. That's also another opportunity potentially for interested stakeholders to provide additional input is at that zoning case as well. And so we will let stakeholders know when those zoning cases are. And then once construction starts, we intend to provide at least semi-annual updates on the progress of construction going forward. And lastly, again, appreciate everybody's participation. I want to let everybody know that emails and phone calls are always welcome. Whether it's no questions too big or too small, and any additional feedback or comments that you have, please feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you for sharing the concepts, and thank you, Mandy, for reviewing the previous meeting. Now is your opportunity. If you are on the line or would like to text or would like to give us a comment in the chat box for you to share your thoughts, ideas, opinions, questions about the Gardner Road development project. So there are several ways that you can share your comments. You can put your information in the chat box. If you're on publicinput.com, it is below or next to the video that you're watching. You can also send us a text to Gardner Road, text Gardner to, and if Jasmine, you can put the phone number back up for me, 512, thank you, 580-8850. You can text us your comments. We'll be checking those lines. We've got about 30-40 minutes for Q&A. For our time today. So I see that there are some comments that are coming in. I want to check in with Heather and Esteban to see if they've received any comments or questions so far.
Thank you, Sharonda. This is Heather. I see we have a message from Debbie. Question is, what is the role of the neighborhood association during the RFP decision period and the contracting pre-construction period?
Thank you, Debbie, for your question. So what's the role of the neighborhood during contracting and pre-construction?
This is Mandy. So we're not anticipating an explicit role for the neighborhood association in terms of selection of the ultimate contractor for this project. But as Travis mentioned, there are multiple opportunities, particularly through zoning, for the neighborhood association to be involved throughout the project. And I do want to say we've been in close contact with the neighborhood association throughout pre-community engagement and throughout community engagement in this process.
Thank you. Esteban, do you have a question or a comment?
Sure. It looks like all comments and questions were answered while Travis was talking.
I can't hear you, but I think you said no. Okay, you're off mute now.
There you go. Looks like all comments were answered by Travis and Mandy.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, I'm going to check here.
Sharon,
Go ahead, Heather.
we have another question from Raul on public input. Question is, what is the targeted level of affordability that you will be asking RFP respondents to meet?
Travis, you want to take that one?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Raul, for the question. I appreciate it. So in terms of specific affordability levels, Raul, we're not calling out specific affordability levels in our request for proposal. What we are intend to do is incentivize proposers to provide proposals that get at specific high-level development objectives around affordability. And so those development objectives include maximizing the affordable units, but also maximizing the depth of affordability. And so to your question, when this is evaluated by the request for proposal panel, it will be evaluated through the lens of, does this project provide deeply affordable units to households at 30% of the median family income and below, and 50% of the median family income below?
Raul asked the question, what is the targeted level of affordability that you will be asking RFP respondents to meet?
Sure. And again, thank you for the question, Raul. So again, we are not calling out specific affordability levels in our request for proposal right now, but we are focusing on incentivizing proposals that would get at high-level development objectives around affordability. One of those development objectives being prioritizing the development of affordable units, of deeply affordable units. And so these are units affordable to households at or below 30% MFI, at or below 50% MFI. And additionally, incentivizing the designation of those units for populations that are particularly hard to serve, such as people that may be mobility or audio-visually impaired, and may need some accommodations, or individuals experiencing homelessness that may need housing. And so in addition to prioritizing deep affordability, also try and provide housing for particularly vulnerable populations as well.
So, and all I was going to add is that, as Travis mentioned, we are not proscribing the affordability levels, but our expectation is that respondents will become familiar with the Austin Strategic Housing Blueprint and the specific goals called out within the blueprint, and be able to tell us how they are going to help us as a community meet those goals. And there are very specific goals related to people experiencing homelessness, people with disabilities, working families, very specific populations. And we anticipate a wide range of responses and a wide range of visions. But really, we're going to be reviewing those based on how they help us meet those specific targets.
Thank you. So,
just a second, can we pause one more time, guys? I'm so sorry.
Sure, that's okay.
We're still getting recordings that it's down again. So if we can just take just a second.
Well, this is a great time for a stretch break.
Yeah.
we've been doing a lot of these virtual meetings, and that's one of the things. I was in a training a couple of weeks ago, and they said about every 45 minutes you should like take a break, stand up, stretch it out. So we get to do that.
Rhonda, it looks like it's still showing live on Zoom.
Okay, perfect.
We're just making sure that it shows that on public input.
Yeah, it's not showing on public input.
Yeah.
All right.
One moment, guys.
I see back up. I see my stretch break happening.
Awesome. Okay, I think we're all good.
It just went back down.
Nope. Okay.
So I think what we can do is, Heather, if you can let the folks know that are on publicinput.com that we can continue to receive their comments and questions, and we will post the responses tomorrow online, but that we are having some sort of technical difficulty with the connection staying stable between the live feed and YouTube. So
I got that, Sharonda, and I'll go ahead and post that.
thank you.
Yes.
So we're still able to receive questions and comments. We're still able to receive text messages. It's just that we're not able to broadcast that out live right now. Okay. All right. So I have a question here. Will you notify the community once the RFP document has been finalized and is being released?
We will notify. We intended to notify the community. At least we have a large database of community members that we put together, and also including individuals that both participated in the previous meeting for this project and this meeting as well. And we intend to periodically update those, everybody on that contact list going forward. One of those updates will be prior to our release of the request for proposal.
Thank you. Mandy, did you have anything to add? I have another question.
Nope, I was just nodding my head.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
we will notify the community.
Okay, thank you. Will the RFP include any minimum criteria for multi-purpose, community space, or live work units?
So Travis could have a different answer, but I'm just going to put it out there that we haven't finalized what we'll be asking for in the RFP. And that's part of the input tonight and until June 1st. We want to hear from folks whether, what the priorities are. We heard some priorities from the first meeting. There was a lot, as Travis mentioned, there was a lot about community space and housing for artists. And so we want to build on that and continue our outreach and learn more about priorities, which will help to inform the RFP.
Thank you. Heather, I want to check in and see if we've received any other comments and Esteban on public input or Zoom or questions.
Thank you, Sharonda. As of now, I don't have any additional questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharonda. I don't have any additional questions either.
Okay, thank you. So, Travis, can you reiterate the next steps for the process? We know that you're wanting to get the RFP out in June, and then Mandy reviewed the timeline for us. Can you just go over that for us once again as we wrap up for today?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So in terms of next steps on this project is we intend to finalize our request for proposal once we towards the end of this month, beginning of June, once we receive all comments from the community, and we release that request for proposal probably in the middle of June. That request for proposal, we anticipate being open for a little over 60 days, and in which proposers may submit proposals. It will close in August or early September, and which time an evaluation panel convened by the Austin Housing Finance Corporation, which will likely include subject matter experts from a variety of different disciplines, including development review, potentially real estate, economic development, public health, considering that this is a site that's adjacent to the public health campus. We'll review the proposals and score them based upon the valuation criteria. Ultimately, a winning proposal will be selected in September, and we will begin negotiations with that winning proposer, hopefully, to hopefully execute a development agreement or a partnership agreement before the end of this calendar year. The idea then is that the project would begin the development review process that could take potentially about 15 months perhaps, and then they'll start construction, and that could be close to approximately another 2 years, depending on the development that ultimately gets chosen to be developed on the site. It can vary a little bit. But ultimately, we expect the project, in whatever form it develops into, to be completed in 2022 and 2023, and whether it's for sale housing or rental housing to be sold or leased up in 2022 or 2023.
Thank you. Thank you for that overview.